The Elmswood Curse, Unraveling a Town's Dark Past. July 3, 2021, Elmswood, Pacific Northwest. The decision to leave the constant buzz of Seattle for Elmswood, a speck of a town tucked away in the Pacific Northwest, was impulsive, even for me. I'm Alex, a 28-year-old freelance graphic designer whose life until now orbited around client deadlines and the never-ending hum of city life. Elmswood, with its promise of tranquility and an almost forgotten existence, seemed like a perfect escape. The drive into town was a descent into another world. Towering pines and firs lined the winding road, their branches creating a canopy that occasionally let shards of sunlight through. It felt like passing through a verdant tunnel, leading me away from one reality into another. When the woods finally opened up, Elmswood appeared, quaint and serene, as if lifted from a storybook and dropped into the real world. The houses, a mix of Victorian and more modern styles, were spaced generously apart, each with its own little garden, vibrant with the colors of summer blooms. My rental, a small but cozy cottage at the edge of town, offered a view of the dense forest. On my first evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the yard, a profound silence settled over the place. It was a stark contrast to the never-sleeping city I'd left behind. In Seattle, the night was just another shade of day, lights, sounds, the constant movement. But here, nightfall seemed to command stillness. The townspeople were a curious blend of friendly and reserved. My first encounter was with Mrs. Fletcher, the elderly lady who ran the local grocery store. She had a warm smile, but her eyes held stories she wasn't willing to share. "You'll like it here," she said, her voice carrying a note of something I couldn't place. Assurance? Or was it a warning? As I settled into my new, slower routine, I found myself drawn to the town's unspoken history. There were no grand monuments or museums, just a small library that seemed to double as a community center. The librarian, Mr. Dawson, a man whose age was as hard to guess as the number of books in his care, was a wellspring of local lore. It was from him that I first heard about the Hawthorne house. "It's been empty for years. Right at the edge of the woods," he told me one afternoon when I asked about local landmarks. The Hawthornes were a peculiar bunch, disappeared one day without a trace. Some say they just up and left, others... He trailed off, glancing out the window towards the dense forest as if the trees held secrets. The story of the Hawthorne family sparked a flame of curiosity in me. Why would a family just disappear? And why did the town seem to collectively shudder at the mention of their name? My evenings, once filled with the glow of my laptop screen, were now consumed with reading old newspapers and town records, piecing together the enigma of the Hawthorne house. But it wasn't just the mystery that kept me awake at night. It was the feeling that Elmswood itself was a puzzle, a place where the serene surface masked depths I hadn't yet understood. And as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the town was slowly revealing its true nature to me, one whispered secret at a time. Hey, quick reminder. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more videos. As days slipped into weeks, my fascination with Elmswood deepened. The town, with its lingering silences and half-smiles from locals, felt like a riddle wrapped in an enigma. And at the heart of this mystery was the Hawthorne house, standing desolate at the forest's edge, a silent sentinel to the town's hidden past. One afternoon, driven by an insatiable curiosity, I found myself standing before the house. It was a stark contrast to the rest of Elmswood's well-kept homes. The paint, once probably a vibrant color, had faded to a ghost of its former self. Windows, dirty and cracked, gave nothing away of what lay inside. The garden was a tangle of overgrown weeds, as if nature was slowly reclaiming its territory. The house seemed to exude an aura of abandonment and unspoken stories. Pushing past my initial hesitation, I stepped closer, the crunch of dried leaves underfoot sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking ominously as I gently pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten years. Dust motes danced in the few shafts of light piercing the gloom. The interior was surprisingly intact, furnished as though its occupants had merely stepped out for a moment, never to return. My heart beat a little faster as I explored, each room revealing more of its eerie stillness. An old newspaper lay on the coffee table, its headlines fading but still legible, dating back to the 1960s. Family photos hung on the walls, the Hawthornes' faces smiling, frozen in happier times. A layer of dust covered everything, undisturbed as if even time had decided to pass this place by. It was in the library, a small room crammed with books, that I found the first oddity, a collection of journals, their pages filled with frantic handwriting. They belonged to Jonathan Hawthorne, the patriarch. His words started off mundane but grew increasingly erratic, filled with mentions of strange occurrences, unexplained noises at night, a feeling of being watched, and a growing sense of unease. The final entry was a single chilling sentence. "It knows we're here." Leaving the house felt like emerging from a different world. The setting sun cast a warm glow over Elmswood, making it hard to reconcile the normalcy of the town with the unsettling experience I'd just had. Over the next few days, I scoured the local library's archives for any information about the Hawthornes and their mysterious disappearance. Old newspapers painted a picture of a well-respected family, suddenly plagued by tragedy. Unexplained illnesses, pets found lifeless without cause. Then, one day, they were simply gone. As I delved deeper, it wasn't just the story of the Hawthornes that caught my attention. There were other, older articles dating back decades, sometimes centuries. Each told a similar tale. Families or individuals in Elmswood experiencing strange events, leading to either their departure or disappearance. The more I learned, the more the town's facade of tranquility seemed to crack, revealing a darker underbelly. And amidst this growing sense of unease, I began to experience my own unexplainable occurrences. It started with small things, misplaced items, a feeling of being watched. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination, fueled by the stories I'd immersed myself in. But as the days passed, the occurrences grew more frequent, more unsettling. Elmswood, with all its serene beauty, was no longer just a quaint town to me. It was a place hiding secrets in plain sight, secrets that were slowly seeping into my own reality. The unsettling occurrences began subtly, almost imperceptibly, weaving themselves into the fabric of my daily life in Elmswood. Initially, I attributed them to the usual adjustments of moving to a new place. But as the days progressed, their frequency and oddity escalated, eroding my skepticism. One evening, after a day spent poring over the Hawthorne journals and local archives, I returned home to find my front door slightly ajar. A sliver of unease wedged itself into my thoughts. I was certain I had locked it. Inside, everything seemed untouched, yet the air felt different, heavier, as if charged with an unspoken warning. That night, as I lay in bed, the silence of the town was punctuated by a faint tapping. My mind, already a tangle of Hawthorne mysteries, conjured images of unseen hands rapping against the window. I told myself it was just a branch, the wind, anything logical. But when I mustered the courage to look, there was nothing there, no branch, no obvious source of the sound. The following morning brought no relief. Objects around my house seemed to relocate themselves. A book I'd left on the table was now on the shelf, my keys not where I'd left them. Rational explanations, forgetfulness perhaps, no longer felt sufficient. Then came the whispers. Soft, indecipherable murmurs that seemed to drift through the walls at night. I'd wake up, heart pounding, straining to catch the words, but they would dissolve into silence as soon as I tried to focus on them. Was it the wind? The old house settling? Or was Elmswood's eerie history seeping into my reality? The tipping point came one unremarkable Thursday. I found a photograph on my living room floor, a black and white image of a family I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine, and its presence was inexplicable. The faces in the photo, stoic and emotionless, seemed to stare back at me, as if accusing me of uncovering secrets best left buried. I sought logical explanations, discussing these events with Mr. Dawson at the library. He listened, his expression an unreadable mask. When I finished, he leaned forward, his voice a hushed tone. "Elmswood has always been a peculiar place," he said. "Some believe it's the land, others think it's something older. But one thing is clear, those who dig too deep into its past often find more than they bargained for." His words were a cold splash of reality. I had been so consumed by the mystery of the Hawthornes and the town's history that I hadn't considered the consequences of unearthing Elmswood's forgotten tales. That night, the atmosphere in my house felt oppressively thick, charged with a foreboding energy. Sleep eluded me, and as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the whispers returned. This time they were louder, more insistent, as though they were no longer content to simply murmur in the shadows. I realized then that my search for answers had invited something into my life, something intangible and unnerving. Elmswood was no longer just a quaint, quiet town with a mysterious past. It was a place where the line between the known and the unknown, the seen and the unseen, was perilously thin. And I was caught, inexorably, in the middle of it all. My days and nights in Elmswood began to blur into a singular, unending quest for understanding. The strange occurrences in my home, once merely unsettling, had ignited a burning obsession within me to unravel the town's enigmatic history. The whispers, the moved objects, the photograph. They were pieces of a puzzle I felt compelled to solve. I dove deeper into the town's archives, my existence reduced to a cycle of research and restless nights. The library became my sanctuary, a place where the whispers quieted, but my mind raced. I pored over every book, every scrap of paper that held whispers of Elmswood's past. Mr. Dawson, with his cryptic warnings, watched my descent with a mix of concern and resignation. I started to map out the town's history, tracing back through decades of odd events and unexplained disappearances. Each story was different yet hauntingly similar, tales of unshakable dread, of families tormented by unseen forces, of people who looked too closely at the shadows and found something staring back. The Hawthorne family was just one thread in a tapestry of mysteries. My interactions with the townspeople grew strained. Their once friendly demeanors cooled as they noticed my fervent interest in Elmswood's darker side. I felt their eyes on me whenever I walked through town, heard the hushed cessation of conversations as I entered rooms. My obsession had isolated me, made me an outsider in a community that valued its secrets. At night, the disturbances in my home escalated. The whispers grew louder, forming coherent sentences that echoed in the darkness. "Leave," they hissed, a chilling command that sent shivers down my spine. Items disappeared only to reappear in impossible places. I woke one morning to find an old doll, its eyes eerily lifeless, sitting on my kitchen counter. I had never seen it before, yet there it was, staring at me as if it had always belonged. Sleep became an elusive, fleeting thing. I would lie awake, listening to the sounds of the house, the whispers in the walls, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and fascination. I began to see things, shadows flitting just at the edge of my vision, forms that vanished when I tried to focus on them. I questioned my sanity, wondered if the town was somehow infecting my mind with its hidden horrors. But I couldn't stop. Each piece of history I uncovered, each eerie event in my home, only drove me further into the depths of Elmswood's mysteries. I felt a connection to the town, a sense that its secrets were meant for me to discover, even as they pushed me to the brink of madness. Elmswood, with its serene facade, had ensnared me in its web of secrets. I was caught in the grip of an obsession that I no longer controlled. It was as if the town itself was a living entity, aware of my probing, and it was responding in kind, revealing its true nature through these disturbing occurrences. I was compelled to continue, to delve deeper into the heart of its darkness, even as it threatened to consume me. The boundary between my obsession and the encroaching darkness of Elmswood became indistinct, each feeding into the other in a relentless cycle. The whispers, now clear and insistent, seemed to be guiding me, pulling me towards an inevitable confrontation with the heart of the town's mystery. One oppressively hot July evening, as the sun bled red into the horizon, I found myself standing once again before the decrepit Hawthorne house. This time, my visit felt less like a choice and more like a compulsion, an inexorable pull towards a destiny I couldn't escape. The house, bathed in the crimson light of dusk, appeared more sinister than ever. Its windows stared back at me like dark, unblinking eyes, and for a moment I hesitated. But the whispers in my head urged me on, their tone almost frenzied. I pushed open the door, its familiar creak a foreboding welcome. Inside, the house was as I remembered, frozen in time, a monument to a family's unexplained disappearance. But now there was a palpable tension in the air, a sense of something waiting. Guided by an unknown force, I found myself descending into the basement, a part of the house I had previously overlooked. The basement was cold, the air stale and thick with the smell of earth and decay. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls and a dirt floor. In the far corner, something caught my eye, a small wooden chest old and covered in dust. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached it, every instinct screaming that this chest was the key to everything. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, nestled in a bed of ancient cloth, was an artifact unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a sculpture, or perhaps a totem, carved from dark wood and adorned with symbols that made my head ache when I tried to focus on them. The air around it seemed to ripple, as if the object was radiating an energy of its own. In that moment, everything made sense. The whispers, the shadows, the unexplained events. This artifact was the source, the heart of Elmswood's darkness. It was as if the town's history of mystery and tragedy was encapsulated in this one object, a repository of suffering and secrets. The whispers in my head crescendoed to a deafening roar, urging me to take the artifact. But as I reached out, a wave of dread washed over me. I realized then that this was not just a key to understanding, it was a trap, a lure to draw me into the very heart of the town's curse. I stumbled back, the whispers turning to angry screams. The house seemed to shake with their fury, the walls groaning as if in pain. I turned and fled, the screams chasing me as I ran up the stairs and out of the house. The night air hit me like a cold slap, the quiet of the town a stark contrast to the chaos I had just escaped. I knew then that I had to leave Elmswood. The town, with its alluring mysteries and dark secrets, was a place of danger, not just to the body but to the soul. As I packed my belongings, the whispers followed, a sibilant chorus that I feared would never fully leave me. Elmswood had revealed its true nature to me, and in doing so, had changed me forever. The morning after my harrowing experience at the Hawthorne house, Elmswood seemed different. The sun rose, casting a serene glow over the town, but the light couldn't dispel the shadows that now lingered in my mind. The whispers had quieted, yet their echoes remained, a haunting reminder of the night before. I packed my belongings with a mechanical efficiency, my thoughts a maelstrom of fear, revelation, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. The artifact in the basement, that sinister totem, had revealed a truth too ominous to ignore. Elmswood was not merely a town with a dark past. It was a place where that darkness lived, breathed, and beckoned. Leaving was a surreal process. As I drove through the town, I saw the familiar sights, the quaint houses, the small library, Mrs. Fletcher's grocery store, but they no longer seemed innocent. They were part of a facade, a veneer beneath which something ancient and malevolent lurked. I stopped at the library one last time, compelled by a need to say goodbye to Mr. Dawson, the only person who had offered me any insight into Elmswood's mysteries. He was there, as always, a sentinel among the books. His eyes, when he saw my packed car outside, held a mix of sadness and understanding. "You're leaving," he stated, more a fact than a question. "Yes," I replied. "There's nothing more for me here. I've seen enough." He nodded, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "Some secrets are better left buried. Elmswood has a way of drawing people in, but not everyone can see the shadows without being consumed by them." As I drove away from Elmswood, the town receding in my rearview mirror, I felt a weight lifting off my chest. But there was also a hollow sensation, a part of me that remained in the clutches of the town's mysteries. The artifact, that source of malevolent energy, was still there, buried in the heart of Elmswood, and part of me yearned to understand it, to delve deeper into its secrets. The further I got from Elmswood, the more the town began to feel like a distant nightmare, a dark fantasy that couldn't possibly exist in the real world. But the changes in me were real. The obsession that had gripped me, the experiences I had endured, had altered my perception of reality. I could no longer see the world as I once had. A veil had been lifted, revealing a darker, more complex tapestry beneath. As I settled into a new life, in a new town far from the Pacific Northwest, I found a semblance of normalcy. But the whispers never completely left me. At night, in the quiet moments before sleep, I'd hear them, a faint echo of what once was, a reminder of a truth I could never fully forget. Elmswood had changed me in ways I couldn't fully understand. I had sought its secrets, and in return, it had shown me a world where shadows whispered and the past was alive. I was free from its grasp, but the memories, the knowledge of what lay hidden in that small, serene town, would stay with me forever. Months had passed since I left Elmswood, the town now just a distant, haunting memory in a life that had resumed its mundane rhythm. I had moved to a bustling city, the complete antithesis of that small enigmatic town, seeking refuge in its anonymity and constant noise. But Elmswood, with its eerie whispers and dark secrets, was not done with me yet. It started with small, almost imperceptible occurrences that I initially dismissed. A misplaced item here, a fleeting shadow there, easily explained away by the distractions of city life. But the frequency and intensity grew, just as they had in Elmswood. I began to notice a pattern, an unsettling familiarity in these disturbances. I brushed it off as paranoia, a lingering psychological effect of my time in Elmswood. But then came the unmistakable whispers, faint and indecipherable at first, gradually growing clearer, more insistent. They were the same whispers that had echoed through the Hawthorne house, that had filled my nights in Elmswood with dread. Panic gripped me. Had I brought something back from Elmswood? Or worse, had something followed me? The thought was a cold fist in my stomach. I started researching, digging into the city's history, desperate to find a logical explanation. To my growing horror, I uncovered stories mirroring those of Elmswood, tales of unexplained phenomena, strange occurrences, and unsolved mysteries that dated back decades. It became clear that what I had experienced in Elmswood was not confined to that town. The artifact, the source of all that darkness, was more than just a remnant of one cursed place. It was a part of something larger, a piece in a vast, incomprehensible puzzle that spanned places and times. I tried to ignore it, to live a normal life, but the whispers wouldn't let me. They followed me in my dreams and in waking moments, a constant, unnerving presence. I began to feel eyes on me, watching from the shadows, just beyond the edge of sight. The realization hit me with a terrifying clarity. I was not just a victim of Elmswood's curse. I was a carrier, an unwitting conduit through which it spread its influence. My obsession, my need to understand, had opened a door that I couldn't close. As this truth settled in, a deep sense of despair and helplessness washed over me. I had sought to uncover the mysteries of Elmswood, to shine a light on its shadows. But in doing so, I had become a part of its darkness, a messenger of its ancient, insidious legacy. In my search for answers, I had found a question far more profound and terrifying. Was Elmswood just one of many such places in the world, each a node in a network of ancient, unexplained evil? And how many others, like me, had been touched by these places, carrying their dark seeds to spread in new soil? The whispers continued, a haunting melody that I knew would follow me wherever I went. I had become a part of Elmswood's story, a living testament to its enigmatic power. And with this chilling realization, I understood that the true depth of its mystery was far greater and more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. We have come to the end of our story. Subscribe and like the video so as not to miss the videos that we will upload in the future. Tell me, what do you think about this story in the comments? I'll see you in the next story.